Welcome to St. Norbert College and the CEO Breakfast and Strategy Series for 2017-2018. I'm Brian Brees, the president of St. Norbert College, and I am delighted that you are here. Based on the last minute and a half and my feeble effort to draw your attention, there's great energy in this room, and for good reason. We're excited to welcome you. And for 20 years, St. Norbert College has hosted the CEO Series, and we've been providing area leaders and executives the opportunity to hear from some of our top area CEOs, and today is no different. Based on this turnout, we know that we're all excited to hear from Kurt. This resource is being brought to you through the generosity of our sponsors. Our presenting sponsors, WPS Health Solutions, title sponsors, Myron Construction, Insight Publication, Johnson Bank, and Johnson Insurance, and the sponsor for this session is Whitfley. Hey, yay, sponsors. Thank you, Dee. I can always count on Dee for a little help. Thank you. We have folders at your table with sponsor information in there. I really encourage you to take these folders with you, spend some time and look through this information. And as you bump into our sponsors, thank them for their generous support. So let's give them one more round of support. Before we dive into Say Grace, it is my great privilege to share some exciting news. At St. Norbert College and the Donald J. Schneider School of Business and Economics is the proud host and home of the Center for Exceptional Leadership, affectionately called CEL, C-E-L. The CEL provides leadership development opportunities for the region's business leaders by offering a highly individualized program of assessment, planning, development, coaching, and mentorship. We just celebrated our first anniversary. In fact, on Monday, I had lunch with the inaugural cohort, and based on their experience and my own observations, I am proud to report that the CEL is flourishing. I'm even more pleased today to announce that we just hired our first full-time executive director of the center, and I believe he's with us here today. I've not seen him yet, but I'm told that Dr. Dean Stewart is in the house. Is he? There he is. So much networking going on here, I didn't get to see our new dean. But I am really pleased to welcome Dean to the college and to the center. Many of you probably know Dean, as he's currently the Dean of Corporate Training and Economic Development at Northeast Wisconsin Technical College. And we're pleased to also welcome him home because he's a 1988 graduate of St. Norbert College, a history major. So please welcome Dean. Dean, will you please stand and be recognized? I would also like to tip my hat to the members of the New North for conceiving of the idea of the CEL and for trusting the college to host it. I'd also like to offer a word of gratitude, a deep gratitude and thanks for leadership visionary, the founder of CEL, the person who has shepherded the startup of CEL, provided as volunteer director in its first year of startup, and was recently elected the chair of the CEL advisory board, Dr. Tom Wiltsius. Is Tom in the room? I was told he was going to be here. He's going to show up when he comes in. Give him a round of applause for Tom Wiltsius. Tom has given great leadership to the CEL, and we're very proud of the CEL, and that Dean's now going to be leading it. So thank you, Tom and Dean. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Jason Salisbury, campus minister, to come forward and offer grace. After grace, breakfast will be served.
Good morning. Let's just take a few moments to silence ourselves in the presence of God. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation. In your love and wisdom you have created us. You have called us to be stewards of all you have created in this world. Guide our hearts as we continue to seek you first in all that we do. We entrust our lives to you. We entrust our businesses to you. We entrust our suppliers, employees, and customers to you. May we always be mindful of their service and thankful for their dedication. We confess that without you we have nothing, and therefore we place our trust completely in you. We acknowledge and remember the many times we have fallen, when we have not lived up to others' expectations, and those we place heavily upon ourselves. We give you thanks and praise that in those moments you did not abandon us, but rather saw us through them, helping us to grow and become better leaders along the way. May our time together this morning be fruitful. May this time together be blessed. Bless this food we are about to receive, and bless those who go without this day. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
There's such wonderful energy in this room, and it's in no doubt in part because of who our speaker is, and it's now my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Kurt Voss. Kurt is the owner and CEO of Amerilux International, located right here in De Pere. Amerilux is a distributor of products used mainly in building and construction applications, including polycarbonate sheet products and PVC liner panels. Amerilux was founded in 2004 and began in a small warehouse in Appleton with 1 employee. Today, the company has grown to more than 50 employees and has nearly 100,000 square feet of production and fabrication space. It's added 2 companies to better serve its customer base, Amerilux Transportation and Amerilux Logistics. In 2013, Amerilux International was recognized with the Small Business Growth Award from the Green Bay Chamber of Commerce. I'm proud to say that Kurt serves on the St. Norbert College Board of Trustees, the advisory board for the Donald J. Schneider School of Business and Economics, the Community Action Board for the Medical College of Wisconsin Green Bay, the board of the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation, and he chairs the Partners in Education Board at the Chamber of Commerce. Kurt has been instrumental in initiating leading-edge practices in leadership principles, employee engagement, and personnel development. He was the recipient of the 2016 Tech Midwest Inspirational Leader of the Year Award and the Business Person of the Year Award from the Green Bay Chamber in 2017. Without question, Kurt's most meaningful non-business accomplishment was to conceive of, to lead the fundraising efforts for, and to oversee a $2.8 million restoration of a historic building on the St. Norbert College campus. The Cassandra Voss Center houses the Women's Center and Gender Studies program and the Men's Initiative, and also hosts a variety of college community events and programs. The college, and myself included, is most grateful to Kurt for his support, his service, and his counsel. Please welcome Kurt Voss.
Well, thanks, Brian. It's good to be here. Appreciate the introduction and the invitation. And let me say this, that many of the people in this room probably haven't met you yet, and I encourage everybody to do that. President Brees is a 1990 graduate of St. Norbert College, went away and honed his skills at another college for, 25 years, 27 years, and now he's back home. And we are so fortunate to have him. So thanks, Brian. So today's topic, culture trumps strategy. What do I mean by that? Well, I guess what I mean is that if you have an enterprise and you have the choice of either having an absolutely stellar, perfect strategy or presiding over a company that has an excellent culture, my experience is that the enterprise with the excellent culture always wins. Now, a couple points on that. Obviously, you want to have both, by the way. I'm not suggesting that you don't need a good strategy, but I think culture trumps strategy. And I'll say, too, that I think that a company with a good culture also leads to being a company with a good strategy. So the one thing leads to the other, but I'm not sure that's vice versa. I'm not sure that if you have a company that has a perfect strategy, it doesn't necessarily make it a company down the road that has a good culture if it didn't have it to begin with. I also think that given today's business environment and the speed of change that we're all encountering on a day-to-day basis, renders strategies, at least the rigid 5-10-year plans, less meaningful today because things change so quickly. And if you're in the taxi cab business and did a 5-year plan a couple years ago, I think that strategy would be changing now to adapt to what's happening in the marketplace. I also think that when I say the speed of change and strategies and innovation, that doesn't necessarily mean inventing the next iPhone or the next Uber, as I referred to a minute ago, but just the day-to-day, minute-to-minute decisions that we need to make to respond to what the marketplace is looking for from us. And again, companies with great cultures typically are more able to handle those changes. I also think that companies with great cultures lead to an environment where both individuals and groups are chasing their potential. And that's really what it's all about when you're managing people and leading a team. And there's a lot of reasons why we need to obviously chase our potential, not the least of which is I think we're in an environment where, especially those of us in this room and in this state, are going to need to continue to figure out ways to do more and more with the same or less people resources. A very underpublicized statistic is that the last time that a graduating class from our high schools in Wisconsin was less than the number of incoming kindergarten students was 20 years ago, 1997, 1998 school year. So to be clear, did I say that right? There's more people graduating from high school than there are people entering college. Well, that's our employee base over the long haul. So those people are going to, those young folks are going to go through school, they're going to graduate from great colleges like St. Norbert, and we're going to employ them. But that pool is going to be less. Now, I know we're working on things to get more people to live in the state of Wisconsin and more people to stay here after they graduate and find ways to employ our ever-growing, or older, I should say, workforce. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is that we're probably going to have the same or less people resources and need to do more with them. And to do that, you need to have an environment where everyone's chasing their potential. So let me talk real quickly about Amerilux. Brian covered some of it in his introduction of me. But real quickly, we are a value-adding distributor of various products. Most of our products end up in some sort of a building and construction application. When I say value adding, what I mean there is a typical distributor, what do? They have a warehouse, they have shelves, they order things in increments of thousands or tens of thousands, and then they distribute them in increments much less than that. And their value proposition is they have the inventory when you need it. Because they're buying it in big quantities, they can buy it at a good price and sell it to you and still make a margin, and that's what a traditional distributor does. Well, in our case, virtually everything that we distribute, we add some value to. So in the course of some of the, say, polycarbonate sheets, we'll cut those sheets to size, typically length, sometimes width. We also do a fair amount of fabrication and assembly, and in fact, that part of our business is growing. So that's what a value-adding distributor is, and that's what we're looking to do, is take as many links as we can out of that value chain between when a product is produced and when it gets in the final consumer's hands. There's different links in that chain, and we want to take as many links of those as possible and be as big of a value-adding distributor as that we can be. So a brief history, actually it was founded at the end of 2003. Our first full year was in 2004 when we moved to a 20,000 square foot building in De Pere. You can see through the years what we did, and in 2012 is when we introduced Amerilux Transportation. To be clear, Amerilux Transportation consists of one truck. For a long time, when we first got in the business, the truck was out on the road. I'd have friends or people come up and say, "Hey, I saw one of your trucks on the road." And of course, I'd say, "Well, to be honest with you, that's the only truck we have." But now when people say that, I just nod my head and say, "Great, I'm glad you saw one of the trucks." Then in 2015, we kind of added to the other piece of the transportation and logistics field by starting Amerilux Logistics, and we just completed our third year of being a full-blown third-party logistics company that not only supports Amerilux International's distribution efforts, but has customers completely independent of that. And just recently in 2017, you see there the picture of our new building, so it brings our total capacity to 91,000 square feet. Real quickly, our sales, you can see in 2004, our first full year, we did about $700,000 in sales with a couple of employees, and you can see we're just short of $35 million in 2017. We have, our biggest customer represents 11% of our sales. Most of our business is in the US and Canada, but we do a little bit of business overseas as well. Those are some of the products that we distribute, different types of polycarbonate, both multi-wall corrugated solid sheet, different PVC products. We also sell some thin gauge steel painted coil and accessories that go along with those products. As far as, just to show quickly the versatility of the products, there's a couple of application photos. Now, to be clear, we're selling our polycarbonate to the people that built that stadium there. That's an enclosure that went around a soccer stadium in Houston, and that orange material is our polycarbonate product. You can see there's internal applications, office walls and dividers. You can see the ability to print on it, and so there's a huge market there, largely untapped. You got that, Verhalen commercial interiors? Here you see a pool enclosure on the left and a big commercial greenhouse on your right. Polycarbonate is the glazing of choice in a lot of these sorts of applications because it highlights both the insulation value of it, the light diffusion characteristics, the lightweight nature of it, so it's easy to install, and the durability of this hard plastic called polycarbonate. There's a couple other applications that are fairly unique. The one on the left is a truck bed cover. You see the black truck bed cover, that's our product. We not only distribute them polycarbonate sheet there, but we fabricate that polycarbonate so that they can plug it right into their assembly line. And there's a lot of trucks with those truck bed covers out in the road today. And on the lower right is high-speed garage doors for a customer of ours. And we actually fabricate those windows and send them to our customer. They contain, as you can see, solid sheet polycarbonate as the glazing, and then they connect those windows together to make the high-speed door. So, enough about Amerilux. Let's talk about culture. And to talk about culture, I think what a great culture does is it ultimately leads to great employee engagement. And engaged teams, like I said earlier, aggressively pursue their individual and collective potential. So here you have a 10-person bicycle to use as my example here. And I have to give Lee Bushy, a former tech cohort of mine, he actually introduced me to this particular slide, but we've included it now in a toolkit that we use for employee engagement. What this is supposed to represent is your team, our team. And on every team you have different categories of people. And I'll say one group, we'll call it group number one, is a group on that bicycle that is pedaling as hard as they can for as long as they can. They know exactly where they're going. They have a destination in mind. If they encounter bad weather or a steep hill, they'll figure out a way to persevere and find their way through it to get to their destination. They're very committed, they're very engaged. Then you have another category of people on your team that maybe they're sitting on the bicycle and their feet are going along with the pedals like everybody else. They don't necessarily know where they're going, but they're happy to pedal along and keep going. They really don't get in anyone's way. In fact, sometimes they even have a smile on their face, but they're really not pushing themselves to or interested in chasing their potential. And then, unfortunately, you've got the third group on the bike that they either don't know where they're going, or where they're going they don't want to go necessarily. They may even stick their foot out and slow the bike down if no one's looking. And in fact, in a worst case, they may even do that when everyone's looking because they don't care. And so the idea is you want to have as many people on that bicycle in that first group as you can, and that's what an effective team has. So I said earlier, we put together our Amerilux Employee Engagement Toolkit. It's got a ring to it, doesn't it? And so a couple features of it is, first of all, this is our employee performance review form. As you can see, it's nothing more than a matrix that judges satisfaction on one axis and judges contribution on the other axis. You can probably, if you look at this, if you're in the, I'll call it the southwest corner of this graph, you're probably in that category 3 of the people on the bicycle, right? So you're not real satisfied with your job, and you're not making much of a contribution. You might be a new employee and you're really, really excited about your job and fulfilled, and maybe you're a 7 or an 8 from a satisfaction perspective, but you haven't contributed much yet, so you're in the northwest corner of that matrix. On the other side, if you go to the southeast corner, you may be contributing a ton. You're working 16 hours a day, you're wearing multiple hats, you're challenged, but you're not really happy because you don't have a life, or you can't get ahead of it and the pressure's getting to you. And so you might be a 7, 8, or 9 in contribution, but you're very low from a satisfaction perspective. What I would say is that managing is trying to find out a way that you can get up to the upper right part of that graph and be intentional about it, so that we're constantly looking to enhance the satisfaction of our employees and the fulfillment level of our employees at the same time that they're making a big contribution. The two go hand in hand. Now, here's a equation that we always keep in mind when we're having these conversations. S equals R minus E. It stands for satisfaction equals reality minus expectation. Satisfaction equals reality minus expectation. So what this process can do is it can define expectations, both from a satisfaction point of view and from a contribution point of view. And once you have that clearly established, then everyone's on the same page trying to make reality better than what the expectation is. Obviously, if this equation leads the S to be a positive number, you should be in good shape, because that means the reality is even better than expectation. Conversely, if it's a negative number, what does that mean? The reality didn't live up to the expectation. And so we found this to be a good way to just couch that whole thought process from an employee engagement standpoint. In addition to that, you'll notice that there's arrows at the end of each one of those graphs, and that's meant to denote that full potential, or a 9 from a satisfaction level, or a 9 from a contribution level, is an ever-changing thing. People's circumstances change. As they learn and grow, their capabilities could learn and grow, and a 9 in contribution is something different a year or two from now than it is today. Same thing with satisfaction. So again, we want to be very intentional about having these kinds of conversations with our teammates. And like I said earlier, the obvious goal is to move continuously towards the northeast corner, which translates into higher levels of contribution and higher levels of satisfaction. And then, of course, that process leads to the development of SMART goals, which that's not a new term, but those goals then would be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-specific. Another part of our engagement toolkit is an exercise that we go through with our teams periodically, and we go through it as part of our orientation with all of our new employees. And that is an exercise where we ask the question, let's turn this around. If you were doing the hiring, what attributes would you be looking for in the typical employee? Name them. And we encourage them to come up with 15. Typically the first 5 go real quick, next 5 go a little slower, and then they have to stretch a little bit to go to the next 5. So what would you be looking for? And I'll just go through the 15 the last time we did it that our employee group came up with. Those 15 attributes are diligent, flexible, hard worker, reliable, honest, positive, conscientious, compassionate, motivated, selfless, authentic, focused, consistent, organized, and perseverance. Those are the 15 attributes that they would look for if they were hiring a new employee. I think they did a pretty good job of making a good list. Our next question is, okay, just to be clear, let's say you were looking for a friend, or you were looking for a significant other. Would there be any other attributes you'd be looking for, or would it be the same group of attributes? And of course, the answer is the same group of attributes. You know, some of them joke, and if I was looking for a significant other, you know, good looks might be one of the attributes, but other than that, the attributes are the same. So then the next question we ask them, okay, we'd like you to categorize each one of those attributes. Is it more of an attitude or is it more of a skill? Knowing full well that many of them may be a combination of both, the question is it more attitudinal or is it more skill-based? And invariably, if not all 15, 13 or 14 out of the 15 are attitudinal characteristics. On this particular list, it was 14 out of 15. The category or the attribute called organized was deemed to be more of a skill than an attitude. But the point is, as leaders and as developers of culture, we need to remind ourselves and remind others of what's really important. We talk a lot about soft skills. Well, that's what we're talking about here when we say soft skills. And specifically, we read a lot of books and we go to great colleges and learn all kinds of skills. And I think at St. Norbert College, actually, put another plug in, there's more work done here than at a typical institution, developing those soft skills and the attitudinal characteristics that ultimately is going to determine whether they're successful or not successful in the workforce. And my understanding is that, that an attitude has a multiplier effect. So if you have a lot of these good attitudinal characteristics, it has a tendency to take your skill set and multiply them 2, 3, 4, 5-fold. And that's really then your worth. Conversely, if you don't have those attitudinal characteristics, they're divisible by that number, and they take their skill and water it down to something less than that. So again, I think it's really important that we let people know that and remind them of this often. Okay, as a couple of years ago, you've seen how we've grown, so we've done, I guess, more things right than we've done wrong, and we decided to sit down and figure out, well, why are we successful? Because we should make sure that, we're all we kind of get it, we work hard, all those sorts of things, but let's try to identify what really makes us different. And so we can be more intentional about doing those things and really use them as points of differentiation. So we came up with this list of 10, I'll call them culture statements, that we've been very intentional about talking about all the time with our teams, with our customers, our vendors, etc. This document, by the way, is in your pamphlet at your table, so you can refer to it. But we wanted to write them in such a way that it was in the language that we speak on a day-to-day basis, not the Harvard Business School core value type thing. And so we wanted to, we call these kind of our Ameriluxisms, and this is how we choose to succeed on a going forward basis. So the first one has a story related to it, and our first principle is make a play. And it goes back to, and it reminds me that you never know when you're going to learn a life lesson, and sometimes that can happen in the strangest places. And in my case, this particular culture statement refers to when I was coaching my son in 4th or 5th grade in Pop Warner football. Now, how many of you have been involved, your kids have been involved, you coach Pop Warner football? Raise your hand. Okay, so you understand what this is like. So just to paint the picture, you're dealing with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. This is full 11 on 11, full pads football. Referees, the whole thing. And as coaches, you have these 4th, 5th, and 6th graders for an hour and a half, 2 nights a week, to put your whole game plan together and teach them what plays to run and how to tackle and how to block and how to do all those things. And then the games are on Saturday mornings. So this particular Saturday morning, the way it looks is you get there an hour before the game, all your players are there, you make sure their uniforms are on right, and you weigh them in because they have to weigh a certain amount and they can't weigh too much. I've seen a lot of dotted heads, yep, you've been through it. And so then what you do as a coach is you run your team through dummy plays. And so in this case, I'm with the offense, and we huddle up and call an easy play and have them go to the line of scrimmage, and we're going to make sure that the offensive lineman splits are right and everyone's on the line of scrimmage right, and they can go ready, set, hut, and not jump the gun and all those sorts of things, and you run through that. Well, what I would also do during this time is I'd multitask, and I'd be watching the other team and see them when they're running their practice plays. And so this particular time, we are the red team, and we're playing the blue team. That's all I know. So I'm watching the blue team because I want to see, who are they handing off to all the time in their pregame. Kind of highly strategic, by the way, you guys. And I'd see if they'd ever throw a pass before, because if they never threw a pass in their practice plays, chances are they wouldn't throw a pass in the game, and then I'd bring the safeties up. It's pretty complicated. So anyway, as I'm watching the other team warm up and we're running through our plays, I noticed them run a play and the right guard jumps offside. Must have been on hut 2 and he fired off on hut 1. So I watch and I chuckled to myself a little bit as I watched the coach chew him out, and like I said, I chuckled. Not the next play, but the play after that, the other team's practice play, what do you think happens? The right guard jumps again. So at this time, I watched that same coach walk up to the kid, grab him by the face mask, bring his face this close to his face, and he's really chewing him up. I can't hear him because he's too far away, but judging from the veins popping out of the guy's neck, it wasn't going good for this little 4th grade kid who's just trying to do something, right? So, I go from chuckling a little bit to being a little aggravated. Well, you can imagine as I continued to watch the other plays, I quit watching who they handed off to and whether or not they threw a pass. And what do you think I was watching? I was focused on that right guard thinking, please don't jump offside again. Because I may have to intervene. This coach is going to kill the kid or something. So, but what I saw when I watched that right guard was that he was never going to jump offsides again. Why? Because he wasn't going to get yelled at again. And so I'd watch, the whole offensive line would be firing off a half a count before he did. He made sure everyone was going, and then he'd go because he didn't want to get in trouble again. So the light bulb went on in my head, and I went back to my team, went in the huddle and said to my right guard, by the way, what's your job? He says, block. I said, okay, well, let me just be clear. Your job is to find whoever you can find to block, and when you think the ball's going to be hiked, you find whoever you can, you block him as long as you can and as hard as you can. And by the way, if you're so anxious to do that, that you jump too soon, I don't care. We'll get those 5 yards back, but I want you to make a play. I went to my running back. I was getting on a roll. And I said, what's your job? He said, to run the ball. I said, okay, true, but here's what I want you to think about. Every time we hand the ball to you, I want you to score a touchdown. Your job isn't just to run the ball. I want you to take the ball and score a touchdown. That's your job on every play. So make a play. So I was getting good reactions, so I kept going to some of the other places, and then I went to the defense and we did the same thing. And I came to realize that it not only works in youth football, but it also works in business when you're trying to lead and develop a team. And the notion of making a play is something that has stuck with our company, and I really believe in it. And the bottom line is that we understand, and we want all of our employees to understand, that we know that the only people that never make a mistake are people that have never done anything. The people that have never had a bad opinion or a bad idea are people that have never had an idea. So your job is to make a play on a day-to-day basis. And as it says on the bottom there, the only true failure is a failure to learn from your mistakes and improve. So make a play. Feel pretty strongly about that. All right, next one, win-win. A lot of people talk about this. I'd like to think that we live it. And the bottom line is, in my view, that any sustainable relationship, not every relationship in business, every personal relationship that you have, it's not sustainable unless it's truly a win-win. And so we have to constantly challenge ourselves to find out whoever it is we're in the relationship with, whether it's a customer, a vendor, an employee, to strive towards this win-win. And of course, the only way to do that is to put yourself in the other party's shoes. And at the bottom there, we have what we refer to as, we want to do business with like-minded people building mutually profitable business that results in the synergistic formula, 1 + 1 = 3. And imagine if you do that in every relationship that you have, what the results will be. Going along with the make a play philosophy is this one. We don't judge people on their worst moments. How many people make a mistake or did have a dumb idea and they're branded for life as the person that made that mistake or had the bad idea? Well, we want to be intentional about not doing that. We look for the overall pattern of good in people. And we want them to succeed by playing to their natural strengths. We want them to continue to get better, but only in the context of being who they are, because everyone's always going to be best at being themselves. So we're intentional about cultivating that. We believe in the human potential and helping people become the best version of themselves they can be. People are, by and large, always trying to do the right thing, period. That's a basic premise that you operate from on a day-to-day basis. People are trying to do the right thing. They don't always do the right thing, but they're trying to do the right thing. Next, we don't want to confuse activity with results. There's a lot of examples of where that goes on. All you have to do is watch the news and take a look at some of the things that go on in our political arena, and you can see that there's a lot of people that confuse activity with results. The best example easy example is the young salesperson who is sent out by his sales manager to call on different folks, and his job or her job is to get 12 business cards that day. That's his job. And so, he goes home and tells his wife, boy, I had a good day today. Well, what happened? Well, I got 15 business cards today. And the wife says, well, did you sell anything? Well, no, but I got 15 business cards. Well, to me, that's confusing activity with results. And it's rampant, and I think it's important that we always measure the usefulness of our activity by the meaningful results that we produce. And the effort is a means to an end. So, in other words, the effort isn't worth it if it doesn't get to the finish line. And I think it's important we constantly remind people of that. And so no one goes through their job in a robotic type of way. They understand that what they're doing has an end and has a result attached to it that's important. And so we want to remind folks of that as well. Conflict is a good thing. We call it radical candor. I think you need to be intentional about this because, in most organizations, especially those that could potentially value you on your worst or brand you on your worst day, we want to make it clear that we value diverse thinking. And by definition, diverse thinking means there's going to be some ideas that are better than others, but that's okay. We want to speak openly. We don't want to keep a false peace. We don't want to walk around with a fist in our pocket. We want to get things on the table and talk about them, but speak the truth kindly. Again, creating a paradigm where conflict is a good thing means whatever the challenge of the day is, everyone walks into the conference room with their sleeves rolled up saying, okay, let's have some good conflict today, because they know that that's what leads to good creative thoughts and problem solving, and we're going to solve the issue of the day. And it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't matter who's the smartest or who's the dumbest. The point is we're all there we'll take turns being the smartest and the dumbest. But at the end of the day, we're going to fix whatever the issue of the day is. Communication is our currency. Susan, if you found a great slide here for me that there are two coworkers are glancing over an office divider wall made out of polycarbonate. I appreciate that. So, again, about intentionality, especially when it's easier and easier to communicate via electronic means, we need to be intentional about having face-to-face interactions with each other, with our customers, with our vendors, etc. And those of you that do business with us, I hope that you see that. Many times it's easier to do communication electronically, but it's not very effective. And we all know that a high percentage of good communication is nonverbal. Well, there is none of that nonverbal communication when you're communicating electronically. So again, this is about being intentional about creating an environment like that. We never want to be a company where you got two people next door to each other in offices and they're emailing each other or texting each other or whatever you do. FaceTime and Snapchat and whatever. Next value statement, our seventh, is consider it done. So it involves having a yes mentality. Our default question is how can we do it, rather than focusing on all the obstacles in the way of getting something done. So you operate from the premise, we're going to get to the finish line one way or the other. So we may as well not waste any time thinking about why it's hard to solve whatever the issue of the day is. And finally, we want to boil the abstract down to the concrete. So oftentimes when you're in problem solving, you're in this abstract plane that's easy or difficult to get to the real nitty-gritty of the issue and get to resolution. So again, it's about being intentional to get down on that concrete level. Let's figure out how we're going to do it and consider it done. And furthermore, if we're in a group environment and different folks are taking different pieces of whatever the solution pie is, we don't have time to follow up on each other to see whether or not, if you committed to doing something, whether you did it or not. The assumption is it's done. So if I said I was going to do it, consider it done. You don't have to check. You got enough things to worry about without checking on me whether I said what I was going to do. And that's infectious, and it creates a culture of accomplishment. Okay, number 8, we don't drink our own KoolAid. What this says is that we have the audacity to expect to be successful. And that is audacious. But at the same time, we make a conscious effort to handle it with humility. And I think that many times it talks about we make an effort to avoid false paradigms. Often those paradigms are things that, we wake up every morning with certain do's and don'ts, things we're capable of and not capable of. My experience is that many of those paradigms are self-limiting. So we need to, again, be intentional about starting with a clean sheet of paper every day, including on things that we're capable of individually and that what we're capable of as a team. And what that means is we're not taking ourselves too seriously and our opinions too seriously because we're constantly challenging ourselves. And the bottom line is that, we know that our stakeholders are determined whether or not we're successful. So if we drink too much of our own KoolAid, well, congratulations that we like our own KoolAid, but really the ultimate test as to whether or not we're successful rests in our stakeholders' hands. So if we constantly remind ourselves of that, it's easy to not drink too much of this. And the other thing, as it relates to staying open-minded and not buying into maybe false paradigms, is the quote that we have highlighted up there, that it's not what you don't know that limits you. It's what you do know that just isn't so. Does that make sense? So we wake up knowing a lot of things, and that gets us in more trouble, in my view, and holds us back more, in my view, than things that we still need to learn. Not that you don't need to learn too, you do, but our starting point needs to be changed, and we need to be intentional about that. Is this a great country or what? Those words are uttered a lot at Amerilux. Things go good, we get a nice sale, we recruit a great new employee, and is this a great country or what? Well, to me this has two meanings that I'd like to touch on quickly. First of all, we believe in the power of happiness and positivity. Period. We look to the future with optimism. Why? Well, first of all, it's nice to be part of an environment like that, right? As opposed to the alternative. But in addition to that, it's scientifically proven that organizations that have positivity and optimism, more gets done. They accomplish more, period. It's good business to be positive and optimistic. So we want to be intentional about that. And at the bottom it says we're intentional about cultivating creativity and innovation through optimistic and positive thinking. The other piece of this value statement deals with just the fact that we want to be intentional about celebrating our freedom and the opportunity we have to have been born or living in this country. And I don't want to get overly political here, but I'm sick and tired of hearing all the things that are wrong with this country. This country has been on a continuous improvement path since its existence, and it continues to get better and better, and in my view is without a peer. In fact, it's not even close. And I believe in American exceptionalism, a little bit the fact that maybe we're better than other countries, but what's embedded in American exceptionalism, and the word exceptionalism is the word exception. We are the exception. We're the only country in the world where our rights come from God, not from some governmental entity. We're the only country like that. And that's why our freedoms and rights can't be taken away from us. That's pretty cool. And especially as it relates to those of us in business, I wouldn't have the opportunity that I had in other countries that I had, in 2000, 2, 3, 4 when I was contemplating, I think I'm going to start a business. What do you think? Wouldn't have even had the opportunity. So I want to be intentional about always keeping that in mind and playing our part in just with all the narratives out there, at least helping provide perspective on what's right about this country as well. Finally, number 10 is that we'll be even better tomorrow. So what that means is that, we do the basics really, really well as a first priority, but we're not comfortable with the status quo. And we don't settle for today's success, but use the magic of momentum. And I think that's something that is good to keep on the front of your brain too. I know a lot of us could probably relate to individuals who've lost their momentum, organizations that have lost their momentum. They quit doing things that made them successful in the first place for any variety of reasons. And I think that that's something that I certainly want to keep in mind constantly, remind myself of, and also our organization. Momentum's a powerful thing. And you either have positive momentum going or you have negative momentum going. And I think it takes a lot of intentional effort to keep it positive. And finally, the end of this culture statement is that it's amazing what's possible when you don't know what's impossible. My being here today is probably a fulfillment of that. As I look back on the Amerilux story, I wouldn't have thought that this was possible, but I didn't know what was impossible, frankly, looking back on it. I was just, like a lot of the people in this audience, you do the best you can, you keep fighting, and you wake up one day and you look at different statements or metrics and things are pretty good, and you then go back to work and keep it going. And so I think that that's also a great way to wake up every morning thinking that why limit ourselves? And it truly is amazing what's possible when you don't know what's impossible. So we use these culture statements not only for our employees, but we encourage other stakeholders like our vendors, our customers, to also evaluate us through the lens of those particular statements. And those people that we do business with in this room, I think, will attest to that. That's our review. Now, it's very difficult to measure or quantify the culture of an organization. Very tough. So this is one of the ways we try to do that. Because if you don't measure it, then it probably isn't worth anything, and that shows you the worth to everyone on the team. So we measure culture. And the way we do it is we do what's called a culture pulse every 2 weeks. Or I'm sorry, two times a month. So we have 24 culture pulses a year. And each one of those, we ask a question that relates to one of our 10 culture statements. We don't ask the culture statement specifically, but a question related to it. I have an example of one, actually the one that, I figured I'd pick the one that had the highest score. But I was pretty happy that this particular one is the highest score. And the question that we asked all of our employees was, how optimistic are you that Amerilux will continue to innovate, grow, and succeed? A score of 1 would be, nope, not optimistic at all. And a score of 5 would be, heck yeah. And to be clear, these are anonymous, and everybody knows that they are anonymous. And we also ask for comments as well. So this particular culture pulse, 31 of 47 responded, and the average score was 4.64. So that meant that what was about 11 people scored it a 4, and 20 people scored it a 5. I was really pleased about that. If you look at the next slide, what this is a compilation of all of our culture pulse scores over the last 2 years. And you can see on the bottom, each one of those culture statements is articulated. So what that says is, in blue is the responses in 2016, and in orange is the responses in 2017. And you can see, the good news is that in every category, our score actually went up between 2016 and 2017. And the highest scores, as you can see, is this a great country or what? But this is something that we share with our team on an ongoing basis, where we don't encourage them to rate it highly. You know, it's an imperfect method because, you know, what does a 4 mean? What does a 3 mean? What does a 2 mean? But if you're generally polling the same group of people and giving them the same 1 to 5 opportunity to score that particular question, you know, I think at least as you compare year over year, I think that's meaningful. So this is our attempt at measuring or quantifying the culture of our organization. So I guess in conclusion, I think that recognition of and an emphasis on intentional culture is critical to organizational success. So I encourage everybody to make a play. Thank you. You have a question or any questions? Harry.
Kurt, earlier you talked about your employee evaluation kit. Is that filled out by the employee or the supervisor?
Both. Good question. So that matrix, judging satisfaction and contribution, the supervisor fills it out, the employee fills it out, and then they talk through what the appropriate score is. Any other questions, quick? Yes?
Discussing, on that topic, discussing satisfaction,
Yes.
is that a difficult or unique conversation
I think it's a conversation that our employees appreciate because they're not used to being asked what their satisfaction level would be. I think that it's up to the individual employee and the relationship the employee and the supervisor has, but I think it sends a signal to them that we're legitimately interested in what their satisfaction level is. And satisfaction can come in a lot of different sizes, shapes. It can have to do with job duties, and it can also do with work-life balance. I think as employers, we need to understand those things and work with those things, always though in the context of maximizing the contribution, given what the maximum satisfaction would be and the maximum contribution would be. But we haven't found it to be, I mean, the floodgates open when you open that can of worms. That's our experience.
I just want to know how many trucks you got.
Thanks, Rick. Steve.
Have you seen your core tenets from the beginning, or have they evolved over time? And if they have evolved, what really has helped you to shape these tenets?
They've evolved over time. I think that it was a function of things that you just do without knowing you're doing them. And then it was going through a process of trying to figure out what you're doing right. And so they've kind of evolved over time. You know, you learn things over time. The team learns things over time. And you say, hey, that's a good idea. We should start stressing that. And so those 10 culture statements came out of a process like that.
Let's give Kurt a round of applause. Kurt, that earlier slide you put up with that revenue numbers, it's no wonder that those bars are going up in the way that they are. You're clearly tending to both strategy and culture, and thank you for sharing a look in your work and the company's work, and for being an example of how to lead a company and how to do it with integrity and humility. So thank you. Let's give Kurt another round of applause, please. We are delighted, of course, that you were with us today, and if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, if you could find Amy Sorensen. Where's Amy? In the corner here. She can get you a copy of Kurt's remarks. And we'd like to invite you to join us at our next CEO Breakfast Series, January 17th. That's next week, isn't it? Join us next week. Mike Hammerlich, President and CEO of WPS Health Solutions, will speak on trying to make sense and find solutions for this healthcare mess. And it'll be here at St. Norbert College. Thank you for being here today. Have a fantastic day, and hopefully we'll see you next week.